I had an abortion more than 45 years ago, and even after all those years, I still regret what I did. I snuffed out the life of my child because the father of my baby refused to marry me, and I was more concerned about my reputation than I was about the life of my baby. And I allowed myself to be pushed into having an abortion. My unplanned pregnancy happened in a time when being pregnant outside of marriage was looked on as a disgraceful thing, a reason for shunning both the mother and the child. I knew abortion was wrong, but somehow all of this seemed like it was unreal, that one morning I would wake up and realize it was all a bad dream. So I allowed myself to be pushed into seeking this abortion. I felt like I was backed into a corner, though, and that I had no other way out. A part of me died the day my baby died. I did not grieve. I did not feel angry. I just felt numb, cold, empty, and a very deep sadness. I felt disassociated and somehow disconnected from it all. I decided that day that for as long as I lived, I would never tell anyone about this, and that I would go on with my life as though nothing had happened. But right after the abortion, I started having trouble sleeping. I became very anxious about insignificant things, had anxiety attacks, and became progressively more depressed. Self-esteem and poor self-image, which had been problems from early childhood, became worse. My faith had always been a very big part of my life, but at this point, I turned away from that because I believed that I could not be forgiven for what I had done. I was also in a state of denial, to the point where I wondered how women could do such a horrible thing as having an abortion. And then I would just stop and think, oh yeah, I did that too. For 14 years after the abortion, I lived in denial and became more and more of an emotional wreck. I became addicted to tranquilizers and sleeping pills, and I would often add alcohol to the mix of pills. On the outside, to family and friends, I was able to maintain an image of normal life. But there came a day where I knew I needed to do something about the way I was living. I knew I had to return to my spiritual roots, and so I went to see a priest. For the first time, I told someone that I had had an abortion, and I experienced God's mercy in a very powerful way that day. I knew that God had forgiven me, but it took many more years of searching for healing to come to a place where I could forgive myself. That search ended when I finally became aware that all my problems were connected to the abortion. In April of 2007, I attended a Rachel's Vineyard weekend retreat. Through this retreat, I was able to acknowledge and grieve the loss of my son, and to finally let go of all the shame and guilt, and I was finally able to forgive myself. Now I will be silent no more, because others who are hurting, as I was hurting, need to hear the truth and need to know that there is help and healing available. My hope is that by speaking out about my experience, others will find healing too, and better still, will choose life for their child. Since the start of the Shockwaves initiative, it has become apparent that my abortion did much damage to my living children. One of them, Allison, who is standing right here today, has recently come to the awareness of how deeply she was affected. But thanks to God's mercy, she is also now on her way to restoration and healing. Thank you.